Need Bitcoin support? The pros at Coinbeast Connect are here to help. Learn about self-custody, privacy, mining, lightning payments, and much more. Simply go to coinbeast.com/connect and schedule a one-on-one video call with a Bitcoin pro. Take your knowledge to the next level by connecting with a pro on coinbeast.com today. Please check out episode 41 with Adam O, aka Denver Bitcoin on Twitter, episode 46 with Hodl Tarantula, or episode 49 with Adam Meister. All are pros you can connect with at coinbeast.com connect today. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the show. My name is Chris Alemo, and I am an amateur investor. This podcast is my open source journal of everything I learn about investing and wealth management. I'm here to explore the key concepts, market dynamics, and investing strategies that will assist you on the path towards financial independence and financial literacy. My mission is to build us from amateurs to experts. All suggestions are my own, and I recommend that you should do your own research before taking any investment advice. See you in this week's episode. I hope you enjoy. All right, welcome back, everyone. It's a pretty momentous episode for the amateur investors, episode 58, and I got none other than Mr. 58K himself, the CEO, creator of the 58K gang, and fellow Bitcoin pleb and Meme Lord, Lord Deniz Sat. Dennis, thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for inviting me, man. It's great to be here.
Great to do it. I'm glad to get to 58 episodes. I'm glad that you're here for the momentous 58K gang episode. So I guess I'll give some background for people on the podcast and watching on YouTube. So I know, Dennis, you kind of started this meme way back in the day, or not way back in the day, but that basically saying 58K gang as we capitulated or continued to stay at 58K in the Bitcoin world for what seemed like forever for most people. And then I know as a response or as a joke, I made it that 57K gang is better because it's you're obviously getting more sats for the same amount of fiat that you otherwise would use. But I guess before we get into that, Dennis, I guess I want to hear how you became a Bitcoiner, when you heard about Bitcoin, what were your touch points, and ultimately what led you down the rabbit hole to become a Bitcoiner that you are today.
For sure. I guess my first touch point, I've mentioned this on other podcasts, but the first touch point I had with Bitcoin was, I think it must have been 2013. The end of 2013, so like 2014-ish, probably the beginning also, when it hit like 1K, and it was all over the news, and the Winklevoss twins were being interviewed and talking about like how Bitcoin is the superior currency or like native currency to the internet. I didn't really understand what they were talking about because the chart, like it looked, I don't even know. It reminded me of like a .com type style chart, and I was getting into finance at the time too. So what was I doing? At the time I was doing like circulation, library, IT stuff. When was that? Yeah, 2014, and there was a lot of downtime. It was pretty much like the perfect kind of job for like starting out in college, or doing that at the same time as going to classes. And I was able to read a lot and do my own thing whenever I got the work done, because basically you just bring up books to the shelves, and the hardest thing was learning the Dewey Decimal System. I was like, okay, yeah, I could get that. I could probably figure that out in like a few days. And so that was the first touch point. And at the time, well, I guess a few years before that, the social network came out, and they didn't really paint the Winklevi as the most trustworthy types. So I think my immediate reaction to that was, oh, these guys are just like trying to scam everyone or something like that by getting into Bitcoin. Unfortunately, I fell for that. I didn't do enough research, and I kind of just like brushed it off like, oh yeah, this is like some dumb internet currency that is going to die out. And it technically was dying out, like 2015, 2016. Everyone forgot about it. It didn't reach back to its 2013 high, I think, until probably the end of 2016 or something like that. And I didn't hear about Bitcoin until it must have been the end of 2017. Yeah, because everyone was talking about it, and they were like, "Oh, did you see it? Like go up to like such and such number, like 10K, 15K, etc." Unfortunately, I got into a lot of shitcoining then, or altcoins at the time, because everyone was making, I don't know, like thousands of dollars within like hours of just throwing in some money. So I was like, okay, yeah, I'll throw in, I don't know, a couple hundred into stuff like Doge, because Doge was a thing back then. I only did it because I liked memes at the time. And I don't know, I guess we'll get more into the memes later on in this episode. But I don't know, I figured it was like a lighthearted community. They didn't take themselves so seriously. And the BCH and Bitcoin core wars were going on at the time. So I was like, I don't want anything to do with that. That's way too serious for me. It's I can't get into that. But yeah, I honestly had no idea what was going on during that time. And I don't think I took Bitcoin seriously until probably like the end of 2018, spring of 2019, because I saw that the chart was going back up. And around this time too, Robinhood released their feature to buy crypto, and I was like, oh, Bitcoin's going to go back up, just because, you know, it's like, it's not real Bitcoin, but it did bring more exposure to the Bitcoin space and like buying it and like getting into it for the time. So I was like, oh, okay, this thing is going to go back up. Maybe I should, maybe I should buy some. So the more research I did, the more I realized, oh, I need to take this like way more seriously. And I don't know how I found Adam Meister's channel, the Bitcoin Meister, for those of you guys who don't know. But he had the most solid advice on how to approach getting into Bitcoin. And I think since that time, yeah, I've been following him and following all of his awesome adventures. And I'm like, yeah, I want to be like that. Like, that's cool. His stuff is great. The life he leads and his values and the whole philosophy behind just keeping things simple and just only sticking with Bitcoin.
Definitely, that's awesome. Now I'm drawing a blank. I know I had Adam on for episode 49. He's an awesome guest. He's a very eccentric dude, but he's very hyped up, high energy. He's another good podcast to definitely listen to. In the wise words of Michael Saylor, I know he always says everything's good for Bitcoin. They're dumping on Bitcoin. They're talking bad about Bitcoin. They're shilling Bitcoin. They're saying good things about Bitcoin. It's all good for Bitcoin. I think that's a good example that even though I don't like Robinhood's ideals or what they do, I think they were good for getting retail people into investing and more broadly Bitcoin. Even in some weird roundabout way, but once you learn about more of the intricacies of finance or even just your investing in stocks or cryptocurrencies on there, like I said, it's not really your Bitcoin or even your cryptocurrency or your stocks when you're doing it on their platform, or I guess it is your stocks, but you can't self-custody the Bitcoin that's on there. Like I said, it's a good touch point or it's a good spot to learn about it or how to get just your feet wet on it for sure. So I guess expanding on my first question, I know you said that you like memes and stuff, but like, how did you get into meming Bitcoin, meming the 58K gang, and like trying to scam bots that are asking you to send them to Bitcoin to get their trading journey started, or asking you how your trades are going? I'd love to hear how you went down that rabbit hole within the Bitcoin community.
With 58K gang, it started around, I think, the spring of 2021. Yeah, it's like April, May, when we first got around in like the 50s and the 60K range. Everyone was always upset that we kept hitting 58K, and I was thinking to myself, why is everyone complaining? We just got here, guys. we were in like the depths of like 6K, 9K, 10K. We couldn't get out of it for, I don't know, that whole period of the bear market. And everyone, I don't know, there must have been a lot of new people. That's probably why. They were like, I need more up. I need more number go up technology. And I'm like, yeah, it's going to happen, but 58K is going to be forever though. I mean, we have to remember that. But yeah, I think it spurred it. It happened because a lot of people just kept posting about it. It's like, why are we hitting 58K again? Why are we hitting the 50s again? We need to keep going up. But that's pretty much when I started it. Sorry, that's my cat.
No worries.
Yeah, and then it dropped, and everyone basically blamed the drop because of China, and maybe a little bit of me, but definitely around the second go around, everyone's blaming me more than China because I don't know, most of the mining is now out of China. But
that's funny.
Yeah, yeah, I don't know. I think the reason why it got so much traction was because it pissed a lot of people off. I think that's really what it was. And then everyone else who understood that I was trolling was saying, oh yeah, like we have to appreciate 58K gang so we can, or 58K, the price, so that we can keep going up. And I was like, yeah, that's basically why I'm doing it. And not to piss people off, of course, but just to just to be like, oh, we've gone so far, guys, within the last year. I don't know what's the reason to complain, because it's the best performing asset out of all the other ones, and minus a couple of the meme coins. Like, I don't even want to name them. They're just memes. I know they're gonna die out just like the rest of them from 2017.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's a great explanation. That's really funny too. So I guess for as much toxicity there is in the Bitcoin community, it seems to be very much an upbeat, jovial group of people. I think a lot of them understand the importance of Bitcoin not just as a currency or as a store of value, but also like if you're following the sovereign individual thesis, personal freedoms and liberties, and just kind of the importance of that. But I guess with that being said, why is it important that the Bitcoin community remain toxic or continue, I guess, not harassment, but basically trying to push out bad actors at times? And then what has your experience been with the Bitcoin community as a whole? I'm assuming when you become a viral meme, whether your body's pasted on Corey, your face is pasted on Corey, or all the 58K memes, I'm sure you saw a lot of different DMs, not just from bots or scammers, but from actual people that are pissed or happy or don't know or going to you for advice. So how's that been?
I think overall it's good, the toxicity. There are occasions where I guess some people get like kind of carried away. I mean, I think it's all hilarious, but I know people are going to I know certain people are going to take it the wrong way no matter what you do. I think at that point you can't really worry about them too much. I mean, I know I get a lot of not so much like crazy threats through DMs, but there are people who post on some of my posts and they're like, I don't know, they say something negative and I'm like, it's whatever, man. It's all a joke. I don't know why you're taking it so seriously. But I think when I started out, I was kind of just like, when did I start getting onto Bitcoin Twitter? I think whenever Adam started saying, oh yeah, you need to go on Bitcoin Twitter just to keep up with news and know what's going on and use everything as like a blog post and not necessarily like interacting with people. So I was like, okay, I'll be like a, what's it called? A lurker. I'll be a Twitter lurker for a bit. But everyone was having so much fun. After a while, I was like, oh yeah, I'll respond to that. I'll meme something like that, or I don't know, I'll post something dumb, like, because after a while you stop caring what other people think. And yeah, it kind of just snowballs into, I don't know, people just recognizing you and knowing, okay, yeah, this dude, he's like, I don't know, he's into the less serious stuff, which is fun. Because I think even with like traditional finance, it's very rigid and it's very there's a process and protocol for things. Even when you're doing marketing, I'm not. I don't say I could ever fit in, which is pretty much why I never went that route. But I did appreciate a lot of the lessons I learned from reading up on, like, I don't know, just the greats like Buffett and Munger and Phil Fisher, Peter Lynch, the Random Walk Down Wall Street book,
Yep.
Bogle. Like, a lot of those books they have great advice for how things were run in the like 70s, 80s, maybe even the 90s. But it wasn't necessarily, the skills weren't very transferable to something like Bitcoin and Twitter. So I was kind of like, oh yeah, I'll just ease my way into this and see how it goes. I think everyone gets toxic when you show up with like no information or like no research. So I kind of got that feeling before I started posting a lot. I was like, okay, I gotta like, I gotta actually research what like mining difficulty is, how it adjusts, when it adjusts, or just certain stats like, oh yeah, when did, I don't know, even the history of Bitcoin, like when did it first start being used as like a medium of exchange? What were the faucets like back then? What was the environment back during the hash wars or the like between b.tc and BCH and all those other random forks? Because I don't know if it's like the algo or anything, but it's, you see the positive feedback when you do mention things from the past, even though you weren't necessarily there to experience it with the Bitcoiners as a, on Twitter, because Bitcoin Twitter I don't think was really a thing until probably after 2017.
Mm-hmm.
But those references are, if you get kudos from, I guess, the older guys, the newer guys see, oh, like there's some sort of like, I don't know, credibility behind this account because, oh, we see like people like Mr. Hodl or Dieter Bob or Pirate Beach Bum and those guys, like interacting with you and stuff. But yeah, if you're going to go on Bitcoin Twitter, just don't show up without knowing anything about Bitcoin, basically, because then you avoid the hornet stings and all that.
Yeah, and I will say, as long as I've been in the community, yeah, there were some dumb things that I definitely said that they pushed back that I definitely deserve flack for when I was very early on. But by and large, a lot of times when I was coming to it from curiosity, and I was like, well, why Bitcoin over any of the other cryptocurrencies? Or like even my biggest confusion was I wasn't around for the hash wars or the block size war. And I haven't read the book. That's still one of the books that I will definitely want to get to and read. I was asking people, I was like, I don't understand, like, why did Bitcoin succeed in that era? Like, why was it, like, why can it not be killed? Like, I know it survived then, but what's to say it's not gonna not survive then? And basically, I'm gonna do a bad job, like, synopsising this, but basically what people were saying is, it got to the point where it's like all the top 50 crypto companies or billionaires or millionaires were backing all these companies to change the Bitcoin's protocol. And more of the Bitcoin plebs or the original Bitcoin developers and stuff were saying, you could tell us to do whatever you want and we're not going to do it. So they're like, you have to update your code to Bitcoin Cash. And they're like, F you, I'm not doing that. And then it's like, well, you have to, like, we're forking it. It's like, you can do whatever you want. We're still running the old code. And they're like, well, we have all this money and we're going to shut down the thing. It's like, you really can. I hold the code. I run a node. Like, you can't do it. So it's like, well, you're going to lose money. It's like, that's exactly the point. If I lose money and you lose money, who wins, me or you? Like, basically, I can remain stupid longer than you can remain solvent. And that's a lot of what the original Bitcoin plebs kind of knew what Bitcoin was. It's actually like, it's actual money. It's not debt. It's not like they owed money on anything that they were holding. Yeah, its nominal value went down 80%, 85%, 90% or more at that time period. But basically, they're saying, we're seeing it now. Governments are trying to coerce people to do things that they may or may not want to do. And basically, people are saying, like, I have my own money. If you're using their fiat money, they can confiscate that from you. But if you're using Bitcoin, they can tell you that you have to change the protocol. You have to make it not 21 million. You have to inflate the supply. You have to not do it. And people are just fed up and saying, no, you can tell me what to do, but that's not what I'm doing. I think that makes it very powerful, and it shows that survived even with the top companies, billionaires, millionaires. I don't know so much nation states were going after it against then, but I mean, even if they were trying to go after it then, maybe it would have died, but basically people just told them, you're not making me do anything. And yeah, ultimately Bitcoin Cash and Bitcoin, all these other cryptocurrencies, their prices fluctuated. They went up, they went down, they crashed along with Bitcoin, and it was kind of a war of attrition. And ultimately, they came out the other side. But it just shows its durability. And I think we're in a much better place now than we were now with institutions, nation states. El Salvador adopting it. I think that's just, it shows its strength, and it's how strong the protocol really is. I know that was really long-winded, but I guess I'd say you have one of the more interesting journeys in Bitcoin, or just even in life, than anyone that I've had on the podcast. So I know you went to school for, I think it was fine arts and film, and then you were working in IT at your library on campus. And then ultimately you kind of pivoted to IT, and then you pivoted to Bitcoin. So I'm just curious your journey, not so much the journey of how you got into Bitcoin, but how you went down, fine arts and film, I see, are very different from Bitcoin itself, and how you ultimately went into IT and then that transitioned into Bitcoin. So I don't know if you want to comment on that and clarify me anywhere that I was wrong in that.
No, I think you nailed it. I grew up in the arts. I grew up in a household where my family they'd basically just, encourage me to pursue whatever talents they saw coming out of me, whether it was like sports or art or just stuff like that, anything visual. But yeah, I think I stuck with the arts a bit longer than I should have, just because I didn't really want to get out of my comfort zone. But once I figured out that, I could basically learn anything I want, and yeah, there's going to be like maybe a bit of a learning curve, but it pays dividends, I guess, if you put in the effort and you put in the work to just use some of the skills you had within like a previous, I guess, line of work to a new one. So the way I was able to bridge fine arts was with graphic design, and then eventually from graphic design I was able to go into more motion and then film. And that's like a whole, I mean, they have completely different skill sets, but I think you can transfer some of the skills, and then you pick up the slack from where you're lacking in at those other points. But yeah, after I was messing around with cameras and learning how to, I don't know, I guess be more sufficient with editing, and learning about, this is why, I don't know, your computer can't handle that amount of like graphics, etc. So I had to start learning how computers worked, and then eventually that's what led me to finally take the plunge into IT. The IT director that I knew at the library, I mean, we just knew of each other. We were just friends. Basically, I just volunteered to work with him, but then he was like, "Oh, okay, like, we'll pay you." Oh, I'm like, "Okay, yeah. If I'm going to learn this skill and you're going to pay me, that's the route I need to go." But yeah, I think that's one of the things about a lot of Bitcoiners is I think a lot of them come from areas or like points in their lives where they are too humble, or they don't realize that, I'm capable of doing this thing if I'm really committed to it. Like there are a bunch of people who come into the space, they don't have a tech background, but they're willing to learn how to mine or run a node for the sake of preserving their wealth. And that's the motivation, that's the incentive. So I think that's what it comes down to. It's just all incentive based. It's not necessarily whether you're smart enough, it's whether or not you realize, oh, this is actually worth learning. I should spend as much time as I can to perfect this skill.
Yeah, definitely. I completely agree. I mean, I have an engineering background by degree from college. Um, but yeah, I'm not overly techy. Like, I'm very good with, I have a chemical engineering background. So it's like designing reactors and learning about chemicals and stuff. So I definitely have an affinity for science. But when it comes to like computer programming or IT, like, that's definitely not my cup of tea. And it's not where I'm best at. But I don't know. I felt like I wanted to learn more, and Bitcoin's funny. It's kind of like it's new for everyone that learns about it or hears about it. I mean, Bitcoin itself is only 12 years old. I guess unless you're Adam Back and you're doing hash cash or cryptography in the 80s or 90s, like you're the only real ones that can say you've been in this game for a career's worth. But for the most part, it's a very new and emerging career. It's almost like the pioneers of the internet or the web or things like that, to the point where I think you really start to see education is not what your degree is or what you learned in college. Your education really begins like once you leave college, or even if you don't go to college. Like there's people that are plenty successful or have done a lot for the world that aren't college educated or dropped out of college, and that's kind of when you start to realize some of the founders. I mean, Steve Jobs, Bill Gates. Elon Musk, I don't even know if he completed, or maybe he was one of the few that completed a degree, but you really see that like your degree is only worth so much, and then you come into the working world, whatever occupation you're in, and like obviously you're 22, 21, 23 in that age range normally when you get your bachelor's degree, and you graduate, and you're kind of coming into the world like, oh, I feel like I know so much, and then you're kind of knocked down a peg as being the low man on campus or the low man or woman on the totem pole, and you have to learn from whatever profession you go into that, like, hey kid, I've been doing this 25, 30, 35, 40 years. Like, yeah, you learned in college, but like now you're gonna learn in the real world, and that that's not for better or worse. It's the reality. And I think Bitcoin kind of shows that you have a lot to learn. There's always something to learn. And unless you have a job like me, like I'm very fortunate to be in the Bitcoin space now, only very recently. But the way I got here was doing tons of work, from working 9 to 5, and then from 7 p.m. to 2 a.m. That's when I was studying and learning Bitcoin. So it definitely is a journey. It takes a lot of time to get here. And it's like you said, it pays dividends. It's at the end of the day, if you put in the time, people will reward you for the work that wasn't you weren't paid for, but it is seen in the work that you've done, or where you're at now, and they respect your opinion and your knowledge on the topic.
100%.
So I guess now that I see that you're working with Vector Media, you're managing BitcoinIV.com, and you're writing for shows, and you're a presenting sponsor, or you're writing for our presenting sponsor at Coinbeast. So it's just crazy how Bitcoin changes you, not just as a person, but also in career paths and destinations and people who you meet. So I guess, can you describe that, like, in your change in life since you've really kind of, I guess, gone down the rabbit hole of Bitcoin? So I know in 2018, I guess is kind of, or 2017, 2018, when you're really finally getting into Bitcoin, I guess, when did you finally convert to a Bitcoin maximalist? And then ultimately, when did you go down this journey to become a Bitcoin maximalist and now doing a ton of work within the field?
I think I mentioned this on another podcast, but I think around the time that PayPal started kicking off certain people with certain ideologies. I mean, I'm in New York City, and it's very left-leaning. I wouldn't say I'm conservative. I'm more in like the middle, but I could see that if you didn't toe the line a specific way, that, I don't know, a company like PayPal or one of these big banking conglomerates like even Chase Bank or Wells Fargo, they will kick you off at some point. I don't know when, but I'm getting the impression that they're not going to provide a service for you based on things you believe in, which it's insane. But that kind of got me more into the thought of, okay, if I'm eventually going to get kicked off, even though I don't sit on either side of the aisle, what can I use to basically preserve as much wealth as I can? Because even if you're invested in stocks, which I was, that's managed by a brokerage company like TD,
Fidelity,
Scottrade.
T. Rowe Price, you name it. Yeah, any of those
Yeah,
large banking corporations, basically.
yeah, exactly. So at some point, maybe even those guys are going to start saying, "Oh yeah, we can't service your account anymore. We basically liquidated all your funds, and you'll have access to all the money within such and such date." Um, I'm not saying that's going to happen, but it's possible just because you don't control any of the money that goes in and out of there, or you don't even. I mean, it's hard for most people to even understand how a trading floor works and who actually holds your shares of certain companies. So yeah, I think around 2018, I saw those articles coming out. I figured, oh, okay, maybe it's time to like look at Bitcoin more closely, just because I forgot where I saw it from, but you could tell with all the Bitcoiners, even on Reddit. I mean, that's where I got a lot of my information during 2017 was Reddit. A lot of these Bitcoiners were very all in. I was like, wait, so you guys don't diversify? You don't have anything else but Bitcoin? And a lot of them would post, yeah, I mean, it doesn't make sense for me to have anything else because this is going up more than all the other assets if you're looking at it from a returns perspective.
Mm-hmm.
But the better part of that is you control your funds. And let's say if an exchange goes down and you can't sell your Bitcoin, but at least you have it on your end. Like you have the keys. You can just wait until the exchange is back up, or you just go to another exchange that's not down at the time to sell. I was like, oh, this is very interesting. Okay, I'm into that. I don't remember the exact point where I was like, okay, I'm going all in, but it was just like a culmination of those things. That was like the seed that planted in my head. I was like, okay, I don't want to get banned from any of these companies for a random reason or no reason. A lot of the times it's absolutely no reason why they cancel your account for some within some of these institutions. But yeah, did I answer all the entire part of that question? Or?
No, I think so. Yeah, and I know I love relating to Russell Okung's story. For people that don't know who he is, he's an NFL offensive lineman, a very good one at that. He's won a Super Bowl with the Broncos. I think 5 or 6 years ago at this point. And he's a big Bitcoiner. Ultimately, he went down the Bitcoin rabbit hole, I think in 2016, 2017, 2018, probably in that time frame. It was off season from football, and he's a Nigerian American, and he decided to go visit family that still resides in the country of Nigeria. And ultimately, when he went there, he brought, he had his NFL salary in US dollars. He let his bank know, his credit cards, all that. Like, he's like, I'm not a Nigerian prince trolling myself or trying to scam people out of money. Like, it's actually me. So he brought cash to Nigeria and ultimately was giving it out to family members to help them. While the Nigerian dollar, they are experiencing inflation. It was still pretty bad back then. He was giving them US dollar because, not that it's a black market, but people in that country prefer the US dollar being the global reserve currency. It's less likely to inflate more rapidly than their native currency. So bringing the US dollars, having the US dollars is very good by comparison to their currency natively. So anyway, so he was there giving out money that he could afford and ultimately ran out of money that he was giving out or trying to use there. So then he calls up his bank and lets him know, like, hey, it's Russell Okung. They're like, oh, yes, Mr. Okung, how's it going? How are you? He's like, yeah, I'm trying to wire money from the United States, where my bank resides, to Nigeria, where I'm at. And ultimately, the person or the bank teller was very nice. And they're like, oh, Mr. Okung, I hate to inform you, but basically Nigeria is on the not part of the SWIFT system. I mean, basically, the SWIFT system is the international banking system, and basically saying that the United States does not operate or deal with the country of Nigeria in terms of financial in financial terms of moving US dollars around. So like we cannot send you the US dollars. And he's like, what the heck? This is my money. It's in my bank account. I'm not over withdrawn. I'm not a bad actor, all these different things. I can identify myself. I have my social security, the laundry list of things to prove that it's him. He's like, can I speak to the manager? Ultimately, the manager of the bank gives him a very similar thing and ultimately hangs up on him. Just kind of like, sorry, sir, we can't help you. Have a nice day. We look forward to having you banking with us when you come back to the United States. So that was ultimately what orange pilled Russell Okun, that he's like, okay, what the hell is this crap? I need to get out of the U.S. dollar, because even when it was his U.S. dollars, the money that he earned being an NFL offensive lineman, making a good salary, a high net worth individual, by theory, he's like, even though it's my money, it's not my money. It's the bank's money and their option or optionality to give it out to him. So ultimately, that's how Russell Okun became a Bitcoiner. And like I said, I think it was 2017, 2018 era. And then ultimately, him and Jack Mallers partnered up with Strike, and he's like, pay me in Bitcoin. And his last salary for either 2019 or 2020, basically he took it all in Bitcoin. And he converted a lot of his cash or stocks or a lot of his other things into Bitcoin, because he sees the value in it and sees it as the best performing asset. So I think that's a great example. Us being Americans, we are definitely privileged in the financial privilege that we have. We don't have a collapsing currency. We don't have... I wouldn't say we don't have an authoritarian government. It looks like we're going that way, but a less authoritarian government, and we definitely have the benefit of having 50 states that are kind of independent from each other. So I think it's just important and shows the importance of Bitcoin for those that don't understand it. And if you don't understand it, you will eventually one day, when they shut off your bank account, they shut off your social media account, they confiscate your money, whatever it may be. So yeah, you definitely see the importance of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's kind of like the approach that I do when trying to orange pill people. It's like, can you put a price on sovereignty? I mean, I can't. I mean,
yeah,
you can't put a price on that, and that's pretty much why I say all the time, it's like, yeah, Bitcoin is undervalued. It'll be undervalued for a while. So
yeah.
As more and more people realize, oh, I can control my money. All right, now I see the value in that. Now I'm going to put all my money in that, or however much they want to put in. But I think a lot of people, especially in America, they don't see that as a problem that needs to be solved yet.
Yeah.
I think in the future, yeah, you'll probably run into more issues of, oh, I can't use this because I can't use my credit card because I've used my, I don't know, my ESG points or my carbon credits too much this month or something. It's like, okay, I guess I'm going to stop working until my credits reset or something stupid like that.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
and I know a lot of people say it, like I know Alex Svetsky talks about it for sure. But even when you think about it, we're even being conditioned for it now, like Google Flights. I mean, not that I use Google Flights. I saw this because someone posted on Twitter, and then I had to look it up and verify myself. That when you go on Google Flights, it tells you your CO2 emissions for the flight. And it's like, this one's more environmentally friendly, and it gives you like a nice like plus 28% better at carbon emissions compared to all the other flights. It's like, what is this? Like, I'm flying from point A to point B. Is it just because they have nicer planes or better emitting planes? I guess that's the logic. But yeah, it's like they're conditioning to you, oh, like you ran out of your ESG points, or oh, your social credit score isn't high enough, or like, I mean, we already see this in China. It sounds crazy. It sounds science fiction, but it is the reality, and it's a scary, scary reality. And it's Jordan Peterson was saying this. I don't know if it was on, I think it was on Rogan's podcast a while ago, but the clip was recirculating within the last 2 days. And he was saying, if I want to totally control you and be an authoritarian government or person or whatever entity, he's like, I'm going to move towards you 2 millimeters at a time till you get to the point of like, that's way too much. And then I back off. And then you calm down, you exhaust all your energy getting angry or stopping or trying to attack me or whatever. And then I inch back in, and you kind of slowly break someone down until you creep them back into a corner. And ultimately, they're 3 miles from where they once were, now crept into a corner. And I mean, he makes a great point. He's like, people that don't believe that haven't read history. And the people that don't believe that haven't read history well, because that's what happens. And it's not overnight that this occurs. It takes time, not days, not hours, not minutes, but like months and years and years and years and decades to do it. And I think we always talk about the fourth turning. I know Mark Moss has talked about the business cycles lining up with empirical cycles lining up with innovation cycles. So we're kind of at like it's 80-year cycles or for business cycles, 250-year cycles for empires, and then I think it's every 20 years is every 20 to 40 years is innovation cycle. So they're kind of all converging at the same point right now. Bitcoin was created and becoming a real asset class. The business cycle is coming to a conclusion, and we're, all this money printing, and we're going into a depression. And then the conclusion of an empire, the United States has been around for just about 250 years, and that's normally when empires collapse. So all these things converging, and we're going to see what comes out through on the other side, basically.
Yeah. No, I'm excited for 2029, 2030. Yeah. It's going to be very good for Bitcoiners. I don't know about everyone else, but
yeah,
hopefully we save as many people as possible before that.
Yeah, so I like I said, I'm a very new Bitcoiner. I had heard about Bitcoin with the Bitcoin pizza, and then I've heard about Bitcoin in 2017 during the ICO craze, and it was going nuts. And I was like, this is tulip mania. It's not a real thing. And then ultimately with 2020 and the crisis, that's when I really went into Bitcoin and really saw like, oh crap, like this is not good. Like, why is everything going up? Why is this? It's like currency collapsing. Learning about more in depth about the economic system, but ultimately, what kind of led me down the rabbit hole was just like you said, like the value of your money and how it can work. I'm trying to get where I was going with this. Working for you. Oh, so when people ask me about my stacking goal and how you said earlier in the episode that Bitcoin's undervalued, which I completely agree. I see it as a race to 2034, and 2034 is, I think it's in May, when we get to the point where we're at 99% of the supply has been mined, and then the remaining from 2034 to 2140 is when we're taking the last 106 years to mine that last 1% or whatever. And I think, like you said, it's going to be a very, very good time for Bitcoiners. Like, my goal is to get as much Bitcoin before 2034, because that's when it becomes, I don't want to say ultimately scarce. I think it's infinitely getting more scarce. But when you're at 99% of the supply, I mean, we just hit the 10% mark, or I think 10% remaining. 90% of supply has already been mined. Now we're fighting for that last 1%. It's only squeezing the existing supply that's out there to be sold. And yeah, I think it's only going to get infinitely better, and we'll see within that decade, things are going to be very tough for Bitcoiners and for people that are trying to be self-sovereign or free. But I think if you get to the other side alive and with your money intact and you don't do anything stupid, I think it'll be very good for most people, that like most Bitcoiners, like you said.
Mm-hmm.
So, Dennis, I mean, I have to thank you so much. You kind of got us the sponsorship from Coinbeast. I know you reached out to me and Ben, and you're kind of saying, like, hey, like, we love a lot of the content you're doing. I think you should reach out to John, the CEO. So I really have to shout a thank you out to you. So I think we're going to get wrapping up here, and ultimately I'll let you talk about Coinbeast at the end and what you do for them, and tell people where to find you on Twitter. But I guess we'll go through the basic questions. So I guess it's been a pleasure having you on, but I guess what's been your biggest investing or business mistake that you've made over your career?
It was definitely with gold. Yeah. There were some like crypto-backed gold options that came my way. Put in more than I would have liked, but I had to learn the hard way. And this happened around 2018. Yeah. So during that time when I should have been stacking more Bitcoin, I was also stacking this shitcoin. And yeah, I figured, all right, if I put a portion of my funds into Bitcoin, a portion of my funds into this coin, we'll see who wins out. Bitcoin did it within, I don't know, less than a year. I was like, man, I should not have put that money into that gold-backed crypto thing. But
were you able to get your money out is a better question.
Some of it, but not all of it, which is unfortunate, but it is what it is. I've had to learn the hard way with investing in quite a few things. I started in stocks, I think. When did I start? Like 2013, yeah. So it's funny that I heard about Bitcoin around the same time I started getting into equities and learning about, okay, what's the best thing to get into? I was like, yeah, stocks, real estate, bonds, etc. Real estate, I was like, I don't have a lot of money. I can't go into real estate now. I'm too young. It's too expensive at this time. Bonds, I was like, no, that's too boring. And there hasn't been, like, even with the 2008 financial crisis, bonds still went down. So it's like, okay, if I'm going to invest in something and we have another huge crash and everything's going to go down anyway, I should just be in stocks.
Yeah.
That was the logic I had in my mind. I didn't even think about gold or silver at the time because I don't know. It was probably because of Buffett. I'm not going to say that like all of Buffett's advice is trash, but a lot of the advice for someone new getting into it and like a younger investor with, a huge time horizon, it's very much trash for someone in my situation or like our situation at this point in time. But, at the time you kind of have to trust the guy because he was like the richest person at the time, still is in like the top 10 or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of what happens when you rent out brain power to someone else. They're just not going to have your best interests. They're just going to tell you to invest in Berkshire, invest in the S&P, like invest in things that don't take any real effort to research on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I'm a big Buffettite, or I was. I took to heart a lot of the things that he said when I was getting into investing, and I definitely think he's a good framework to learn from, and he has a lot of valuable quotes that hold true, even though with his conflicting views on Bitcoin, him and Charlie. And like I said, I think it's very valuable. You make a great point in that regard. But to the same sentiment, Buffett always says you got to do your own thinking and your own advice. If not, just invest in Berkshire Hathaway or just invest in the S&P 500, and that's the best thing you can do. So that makes sense. I guess, what are your favorite books, podcasts, YouTube channels, or websites that you like to go to for investing information, or specifically at Bitcoin information? You don't have to give one for everyone. Everyone feels like, oh, I got to give one for everything. If you only listen to podcasts, you only listen to YouTube, you only read books, I'll take any one of them.
Yeah. I think what really started my journey was The Intelligent Investor. I wouldn't suggest people get involved with traditional finance unless they're, I don't know, it's kind of hard to tell people to get into like the mindset of what traditional finance is all about, just because Bitcoin's here. It's like you don't need to go that route. Just go straight into Bitcoin.
You'll front run 99% of the world in going into this new asset class.
Yeah, exactly. But I don't know. It could go either way. Like, if you want an evangelist sales type of job to get more family funds or smaller hedge funds involved in Bitcoin, then yes, you should be reading stuff like The Intelligent Investor, Philip Fisher, Peter Lynch, because then you'll understand, okay, this is how they operate. They're not gonna go all in like all the Bitcoiners on Twitter do. They're just gonna put maybe a percentage in. You just have to, I guess, relate it to something like an equity. You have to relate Bitcoin as an equity to them so that they kind of understand what's going on in that space, even though it's technically considered a currency, but it's also property at the same time. I mean, that's pretty much why a lot of them are just like, I'm not going to touch that. We have no idea how to put it in a box or categorize it. It's too new. But I mean, hopefully now, I don't think it's new. It's just sort of like it's getting its legs because of Saylor and everyone else getting involved with it. But yeah, The Intelligent Investor was great for my journey. I don't know if it's going to be good for everyone else's journey. YouTube, specifically Bitcoin, I would just say watch Simply Bitcoin. Those guys,
Yeah,
Nico
I
and
love
Phil.
it.
Yeah, I think that's where you should start, and then you can branch out to things like Rapid Fire. That's great with
John Vallis.
yeah, John. John's awesome. I think he is a great he's like on the pulse of like Bitcoin philosophy. He's like the Bitcoin philosopher in my mind. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, I want to get a little meta. I want to get a little outside the box type of thinking. Go with John. He's great. Um, Books, yeah, definitely the Bitcoin Standard. Um, Sovereign and Individual. Those would be like the two go-to ones. There's another one. I'm trying to remember the other one I read. I can't think of it now. But yeah, I think most of the time I'm listening to just like other crypto channels just to see where their heads are at as well. I'm not going to name them because I don't know. I don't want people going off into like altcoin land and just throwing money and listening to these guys. But
You're listening to it for perspective and to see where they're going wrong, basically.
pretty much, I mean, they do. So the thing is, with a lot of them, they cover Bitcoin extensively, and then they go into like whatever flavor of the day, flavor of the week is, which is, it's too bad. But hearing about these other projects, I'm like, okay, I see where the flaw is there. It's definitely not centralized because it's new. None of these are centralized or decentralized. So I don't know. Most of the time I just skip them. I'm like, I don't want to hear about that.
Yeah.
Been through that phase. Ugh. Don't want to go back.
That sounds good. All right, so Dennis, thank you once again for coming on. I guess if someone wanted to learn more about you, where could they go? If you want to say anything about your business, your Twitter account, where to find you on Coinbeast, that'd be great.
Yeah. I'm mostly on Twitter. Kind of on, kind of like pulling away from Twitter a bit. I mean, I'll be on there every now and then, but definitely less from before, just because whenever 58K comes around, it's like inbox is like, it's over. But yeah, you can reach me at DENIZSAAAT on Twitter. But yeah, if you have questions like outside of Bitcoin or specifically Bitcoin, you can reach me there. I'm pretty responsive.
Yeah. All right. Sounds good. Thanks for coming on, Dennis. Thanks, everyone, for listening. Looking forward to see you next week. Have a good one, everyone. Bye.